Well, ladies and gentlemen, we knew it was inevitable yesterday, but now it has been confirmed. The decision desk has called Nevada and Arizona that happened last night. So Donald Trump will get his 312 electoral votes. That's a bigger win than he had in 2016 for a number of different reasons. Number one, in 2016, he had 306 without Nevada. He's taking Nevada. The updates in Nevada right now, over 95% is in, and Trump is going to win by over almost 4 points. And it surprises me that Sam Brown didn't end up winning the Senate race there just based off of the margin here for Trump. You wouldn't think Brown would underperform by that much. But Trump winning by over 3 in Nevada, certainly I thought it was going to be one of the closest swing state, or at least one of the closest, possibly within a point. But it looks like it is maybe around a 3 or more of a point margin. And then you take a look at Arizona, 75% of the vote in. They got to do a better job accounting in Arizona. Really, all these states have to follow the Florida model. It would make things so much more easier. There would be so much more trust into the entire process if every state followed Florida. But you do have Donald Trump sitting with around a 6 point, maybe a little bit less than a 6 point lead right now. Very impressive lead, not surprised based off of all the other swing states. Arizona was kind of thought of as the most right state out of all the swing states. It had the highest percent chance to go to Trump throughout the past month of the entire cycle. And there were rumors back in late summer that the Democrats were giving up Arizona and they really didn't want to campaign there. And you can see kind of why Trump's sitting with a solid win, winning Arizona by more than Georgia. Georgia ended up being, as we get these final numbers, because you get these mail-in ballots at the end and it really closes the gap. They'll dump like the last 5 or 6%. It'll be heavy liberal mail-in ballots. Georgia ends up about a 2.2 point victory for Donald Trump. North Carolina ends up almost a 4 point victory. So maybe that expanded a little bit. You can see Pennsylvania under 2. Michigan was pretty close. You're looking at like a 1.5 point victory. And then Wisconsin, believe it or not, even closer, around a 1 point victory. So believe it or not, since I checked last night, the margins might have gotten a little bit bigger for Trump, but Wisconsin's still just a 1 point victory. Michigan 1.5, you'll take that. And then Pennsylvania, you will take a 1.9, basically a 2 point victory there. So looks like that is the final numbers. We do have a few states that 71% in Washington. Washington is like one of the only states that's gone slightly to the left. I wonder if that's just based on the counties. Maybe Trump will make up a few percent there. And then 78% in Oregon, Trump is losing by around 12 and a half points, give or take, when you look at that. When you look at the overall shift with all of these states, you can see the only ones, and this goes to the whole popular vote idea. I mean, Trump losing the popular vote by 4 points. Now he's going to win it possibly by around, I think the estimation is 1.5 to 1.8 points once California gets fully counted. I would be interested in looking at California right now. 60% is in. Right now, Harris is up by 17%. She's going to tack on, it's definitely a few million more votes, but so is Trump. So we'll have to see what that ends up at. But right now, Trump's sitting at basically 73 million. He'll at least get to 75 with those California numbers. Harris will probably get to maybe 71 or 72, and it'll be about a 1.5 to a 1.8 point popular vote victory, which certainly is more than I thought. I was saying Trump's going to win the popular vote by like 0.5, and so he's going to likely win it by even a point more than that. But you can see all these crazy shifts. Look at this, the one that sticks out. It is Florida and Texas. Both Florida and Texas shifting crazy to the right this cycle. And even Rhode Island shifted big. New York, California, we'll see what the final numbers are in California. The thing with California is I wonder if there'll be a massive mail-in dump at the end that really pushes Harris, her margin up to around 20 or 21. Not that it matters too much, but either way, all of these states, you can see Utah, another one slightly moving to the left. There's people saying that a lot of liberals moved to Utah from California as well, but all of these states moving to the right. The biggest margin, Wyoming. I think technically the biggest margin was like the first district in Nebraska, but if you just go by a state by state case, it is Wyoming, West Virginia, North Dakota, Oklahoma. Every county in Oklahoma always goes for Trump. But yeah, it was a total blowout, and the final number will be 312. And it's not just the 312, because 312 we always thought was possible. It's just winning every single swing state. It is the popular vote margin and running up the huge margins in a Florida, in a Texas, making New York more competitive, making New Jersey more competitive. New Jersey, people are talking about it potentially being in play when you look at some of these states that Trump narrowly lost. You're talking about a Minnesota, you're talking about a New Hampshire, you're talking about a Virginia, a New Mexico, and then you've got New Jersey. Illinois even moves to being only an 8-point margin. I think it's going to be pretty hard in 2028. I know people are getting excited about it, but the liberals are going to say it was an aberration. Harris was a bad candidate. She didn't turn out. It is pretty remarkable that she is only going to end up, because I know people that one graph has been going viral where if you look at the total votes, it's like linear for liberals outside of 2020 where Biden got 81 million. Like it's 66, 68, 81, 68. Technically, Harris is going to get over 70 because of California. But still, I mean, that's a crazy difference. The entire thing that they were trying to swing in 2020 with the votes that both Biden and Trump got, but especially Biden getting over 80 million was, well, I mean, there's more people in the United States now, so there's going to be more votes. But it's like during a pandemic, there's going to be that many more people voting. I understand they had crazy operations on the ground with the ballot harvesting, but it's starting to become very hard to believe that number. I mean, when you're talking about 81 and now it goes all the way back down with supposedly more people in the U.S. for Harris. Again, even though it's important to understand that California is not fully counted, she's probably going to end up with 71, 72. That's still a far cry from the 81 million. And according to liberals' own logic, you would think she would get even more than Biden got, or at least similar, considering the population growth in the United States. Like that was the reason they used for Biden getting so many votes. But either way, it is what it is. You'll take the Trump victory, 312, and a very, very nice win there. This is funny. Job experience, prisoner, Fulton County Jail, drive-through server, garbage truck operator, president. Amazing. And then you do also have this. Yeah, so this is another thing that's interesting. This will not go into effect in 2028, although I will say Trump really needs to look into if they did seriously inaccurately divvy up the electoral votes because the census was counted wrong. Because, in 2020, every 10 years, the census gets counted. They update the electoral votes based on population. You're going to get some states losing electoral votes, some states gaining. Well, California's been losing like crazy. You've also got New York losing. And by the way, with Trump's deportation plan, they might even lose more in some of those bigger states. So we'll see. But it's been California, New York, Illinois, all losing electoral votes. And you can see this is the scenario where the Dems would get 270 normally. It's Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. But even in this scenario, they're not getting 270 now. If the census continues to shift the way, or if the population continues to shift, and then the census comes out, you're talking about Republicans gaining a bunch of electoral votes. Now that Texas is hopefully secured, you win Texas by 14 points, you would hope that that's not going to be a purple state. Texas is gaining a population. They're getting a ton more electoral votes. California is losing. Florida is also gaining a bunch of electoral votes as well. They're going to pick up 4 or 5, very likely at least. And so now you're talking about their blue wall holds. It doesn't matter, though. Trump, in this scenario, the Republican could lose Nevada as well. Arizona's looking to become like a solid state. It's probably going to gain another electoral vote as well. And you're also going to be getting I believe... No, Utah wouldn't be gaining one. Colorado might gain another electoral vote, but still, when it comes to this is looking very good. When in 2032. Now that's a while. You've still got the 2028 election because the census is going to update in 2030, and that's when we'll get the numbers. But we had such a crazy migration shift because of what happened with the pandemic in 2020 and 2021, and the census, updating in 2020. It really can't take into account the shift from the pandemic because that mainly happened in 2021, 2022. And California lost a bunch of population. New York lost a bunch of population. And they're not going to be able to replace that population with the illegals because Harris lost. And so even if you would think we'll see what happens in 2028, but even if they won in 2028, it's going to be very hard to supplement that in 2 years. And they're going to lose significant electoral votes in 2030 when the census updates there. So this is another interesting thing to watch when it comes to that. You've got Walz and Doug, looks like they're crying. This was last night. Kamala gave her concession speech at Howard University. That's where that was. You've got liberals freaking out. This is another thing I wanted to talk about. With these liberals, whenever they lose, it's like a guilt trip. See, I know people are like, they love watching these liberal freak out videos. I don't know what it is with me this year. I don't know if I'm just older or I just don't really care. I mean, they lost. I don't really care if a lot of those videos seem fake too. It's like this black girl starts recording herself, face camming, goes in her car and just starts screaming at the top of her lungs. And it's like in the morning, it's like 10 hours after the election. Like, some of them are funny, I agree, but it's like, I don't care. But when you've got these people on CNN, they start lashing out. But normally what they'll do to cope is they will start acting like it's going to be like Trump's going to run this crazy dictatorship. And we know with checks and balances and everything and the separation of powers, it's just not possible. But they just go crazy and they're like, you know what? I'm just so sad for all the women and all the rights that are going to get taken away. That's why it's just this like condescending, like feel bad for me, boo hoo. Like that's how they all cope about it. And I mean, I really don't have a reaction to it. I don't care. But I mean, that's just what they do, I guess. You've got Biden, Harris, DOJ dropping cases against Trump. That's another thing people were asking me about last night was the whole, well, what's going to happen to Trump's cases? He's getting sentenced like right around Thanksgiving because that's when that's happening. And this is remarkable because imagine a scenario and there's more to it than this, but the result of the election is obviously extremely important when it comes to these cases. The fact that Trump won in the margin that he did, I feel like there's nothing that they can really do to Trump at this point, just based off of the will of the American people. I mean, that was an annihilation. See, if it would have been really close and Trump barely wins but loses the popular vote by 3 points, they might try and fight a little bit. But this is the American people saying, no, we want him. And imagine they do something here and they're voting for him with all of this stuff going on. So it's not like the American people don't know and they can't use that as an argument like, oh, they didn't know this, they weren't informed, and we have to do this to Trump. So they've got no standing. This is all going to have to be dropped no matter what. I think based off of the fact that Trump's now president-elect, they can't even have some of these cases, and that's why they're dropping them against Trump. So we'll have to see what happens when it comes to that. Jill hasn't stopped smiling since she came downstairs this morning. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but there has to be some joy from the whole Biden family that this happened, because it was very obvious that they didn't want to leave. And whether or not Joe wanted to leave, he's really old, who knows? But Jill and Hunter did not want Joe to leave. They were pressuring them. It took a whole saga that lasted like 3 weeks. Biden was doing these interviews like every night trying to panic sell himself and say that I'm staying in this race. And then the liberal establishment that wanted Biden gone finally won. And then maybe it was an FU to the establishment if they did want an open primary for the DNC where Biden immediately endorses Kamala Harris, and then they all have to get around and do that. The entire thing was just like the fact that Biden released this weird letter on a Sunday afternoon. And it's like the starting quarterback getting benched for the backup. I mean, if you're the starter, there's a part of you that wants the backup to fail. And it was a blowout. It wasn't even close. So I'm sure they feel vindicated and they think that Biden should have been the candidate and he would have had a better chance of beating Trump. I don't think Biden would have won because it's just so absurd, the charade, the idea that Biden would try and sell himself for 4 more years after that debate performance. I mean, you could try and pick up the pieces and have Biden do another debate and maybe it'd be slightly better. But again, you're trying to sell yourself for 4 more years. Biden, he's just too old and too feeble and too cognitively declined to do it to where he could actually win. So I think Trump would have won a rematch against Biden anyways. But it is funny. Maybe this is the best result for the Biden family. They don't have to deal with Joe losing to Trump in a rematch, and then they get to have the joyous glee of the Democrats replacing Biden with Harris, and Harris not only losing, but it's not even close. So that's it. That's an interesting dynamic as well. Yeah, and then you've got like this, like what is? She's like, this is done for attention. It's done for attention. I'm sorry. Like, no, you're not going to react like this in the morning, like 12 hours after it was decided. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.